My name is Pierce. Detective, private, licensed, and regrettably familiar with the darker corners of the human mind. I've seen blood, I've seen ghosts, figurative and perhaps literal. But what unsettles me most are the places that pretend to heal but rot from the inside. This particular case began not with a scream, but with a referral. It arrived in a pale gray envelope with no return address, a standard practice in my field when someone wants help without drawing attention. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, no salutation, no signature. Patient ID, 11872. Name, Melinda Royce. Age, 19. Institution, Harrow Psychiatric Clinic. Note, claims to see people who do not exist. All staff report identical hallucination patterns. Case suppressed. Request observe. Record. Report. No sender. No payment. Just an instruction. Whoever wanted me there didn't want the truth, they wanted confirmation. I almost threw it away. Almost. Harrow Clinic was a name I knew. It sat 27 miles outside the city in a patch of woods that most GPS systems skipped right over. An old estate converted into a treatment facility after the war. It had a reputation for being quiet. No scandals, no breakthroughs. Just silence. Too much silence. Still, I'd had a dry week and a disturbing dream the night before involving flickering lights and a girl in restraints whispering my name. Sometimes, intuition disguises itself as nightmares. I packed a notebook, a voice recorder, and a .38 revolver. Standard issue when I don't know what I'm walking into. Then I took the long drive toward Harrow, through winding forest roads where trees grew too close and cell phone signal gasped for air. By the time I arrived, dusk had begun bleeding into night. The clinic stood like a slouched giant, 5 stories, Victorian facade, barred windows that didn't try to hide their purpose. Ivy crawled over the stone like veins. A rusted sign greeted me with faded serif letters. Harrow Clinic, founded 1933. Underneath in smaller type, healing minds, revealing truths. I parked, stepped out, and immediately felt the air thicken. The forest was too quiet, not a single bird. Even the wind moved like it was afraid to be loud. The receptionist inside didn't flinch when I introduced myself. A woman in her 50s with unreadable eyes and a white uniform that looked more like a nurse costume than actual medical attire. "You're the observer?" she asked flatly. I nodded. "Room 204. Don't stray into the West Wing." No ID checked. No clipboard. Just a key and a warning delivered like a sedative. My room was surprisingly clean. Sparse. Bed, desk, wardrobe. No mirrors. I noticed that immediately. A notepad lay on the desk already. The pages were blank, but when I lifted it, I found a faint imprint of someone's handwriting on the top sheet. I took out a pencil and gently shaded over the marks. "Don't talk to her," reflection. That was all. I should have left right then. But curiosity is a curse I wear proudly. Melinda Royce. Age 19. Patient ID, 11872. I met her the next morning. She sat in the common area, painting on a blank canvas with no colors, just water. Her hands moved like she was tracing something she could see and no one else could. She noticed me watching, and without blinking said, "You're not from here." "No," I replied. "I'm just visiting." "Then you should stop looking in the mirrors." There it was again. Mirrors. I tried to redirect. "You're Melinda?" "I was," she said. "But she doesn't like that name anymore." "Who's she?" She smiled. Not at me. At the wall behind me. I turned around. Nothing. Just pale paint and a faint stain that looked vaguely like a handprint, too high to belong to anyone sitting. Dr. Arlen, the head psychiatrist, met me later that day. Greasy hair, yellow teeth, and a grin that didn't match his eyes. He insisted everything was under control. Delusional behavior. Shared hysteria. Nothing. Supernatural. His words, not mine. Melinda's case is typical. Trauma-induced hallucination reinforced by institutional echo chambers. She was abused by her mother, who called herself Avellini. It explains the dissociation. Perfectly normal. And the other patients? I asked. Coincidence, he said too quickly. I wasn't convinced. By the third day, more patients whispered my name. I never told it to them. One old man, Mr. Kovac, gripped my arm in the hallway. "She's hungry," he rasped. "Who?" I asked. He looked at the ceiling and began screaming, clawing at his eyes until orderlies dragged him away. I found scratches on my room's door that night, from the inside. One final event closed out the first part of my stay. I couldn't sleep. Something kept pacing outside my room. I grabbed my recorder and cracked open the door. Empty hallway. Light flickering. Faint sound of dripping water. But I swear on my badge, the mirror at the end of the corridor was fogged, like someone had just breathed on it. And as I stared, a shape began forming behind the glass. Not my reflection. Someone taller, thinner, wearing a hospital gown, smiling too wide. I slammed the door. When I played back the recording the next morning, I heard something just before I shut the recorder off. A voice, faint, whispering, "She lives behind your eyes." I didn't sleep after the mirror incident. Even after I bolted the door shut and shoved a chair under the handle, my eyes refused to close. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant shuffle in the hallway, they all fed the idea that I wasn't alone in that room. Morning didn't help. The clinic didn't feel brighter in daylight. It just changed masks. At breakfast, Melinda was gone. Her usual seat in the common room sat empty, her untouched tray collecting condensation. I asked one of the nurses about her. "Transferred for evaluation," she replied without looking at me. I'd heard that phrase before. In my experience, it often meant either heavy sedation or the basement. I requested access to her records. Dr. Arlen refused. "She's under psychiatric protection now. Your observations are no longer needed." "Funny," I replied. "No one told me my job was over." He leaned forward, voice low. "You're not staff. You're a visitor. Don't make me file trespassing." That was the first time he dropped the act. No polished words, no psychobabble. Just threat. I nodded politely and left. Then I made my way to the maintenance wing. If the records wouldn't come to me, I'd find them myself. The West Wing was officially sealed. Under renovation, according to the faded sign and rusted chain looped around the door handles. But one of the orderlies, an old man with sunken cheeks and darting eyes, gave me a hint. "Look for the door that breathes." It took me 2 hours to find it. An old service passage behind a linen closet. It smelled like ammonia and something older, like wet paper and decay. The light above the door flickered as I approached. And yes, the door breathed. Not literally, of course, but the draft that pushed in and out of the gap around the frame pulsed like a lung. I pried it open with a screwdriver and stepped into the dark. The West Wing was colder. Abandoned, yes, but not empty. Paint peeled in long strips from the walls. Doors were marked not by numbers, but symbols, chalk sigils, black crosses, and phrases scratched deep into the wood. "Let her sleep. Do not speak her name. Mirrors are her eyes." The deeper I went, the worse it got. Lights didn't work. My flashlight kept flickering. My recorder, which I'd left running, began picking up static and faint crying. Then I found the observation room, a two-way mirror. On one side, a control panel, burnt out and fused with melted plastic. On the other, a padded cell. Inside, a chair bolted to the floor and leather straps torn loose. Scrawled on the walls in something too dark to be ink were hundreds of phrases, all written by the same hand. "Avellini, Avellini, Avellini. She's in me. She never left." And in the center of the wall, in larger letters, "She came through the mirror." I stepped back, heart thudding, breath caught in my throat. Then I saw it. The mirror. It wasn't reflecting me. I was standing right in front of it, but it showed only the empty room behind the glass. And then, as I watched, a silhouette moved across the other side. Slow, jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. She stopped at the edge of the glass and turned her head toward me, though she had no eyes. Just black, hollow sockets, and a mouth that opened too wide. She pressed her hand to the glass. I ran. Back in my room, I listened to the recorder. More static. And beneath it, a voice. This time clearer. "You brought her back." I checked my eyes in the mirror above the sink. They were mine, I think. That night, Melinda returned. I found her in the hallway outside my room, barefoot, eyes wide and unfocused. She followed you, she said. You went into her house. Now she's awake. Melinda, I said slowly. Who is Avellini? She shook her head. She's not a person. She's a place. A room without walls. A mirror without glass. She used to live in just one of us. Now she wants all of us. Then she looked at me, really looked. And she wants you most. Later that night the power went out. Alarms didn't sound. Emergency lights didn't turn on. Just darkness. And in that darkness, I heard something walking. Not footsteps. Something dragging. Something wet. A breath against my ear. I see you. I turned. Nothing. But on the mirror across the room, a single word appeared, written in condensation that hadn't been there before. Welcome. They always say that when you lose your grip on reality, the first thing to go is time. But I knew exactly what time it was when I woke up. 3:33 a.m. The blackout had eaten everything. Light, sound, even air. The silence was thick, suffocating. The digital clock on the wall blinked. 3:33. Once, then cut out. The condensation writing on my mirror hadn't vanished. In fact, now it had spread. Beneath welcome, new words had appeared. She's waiting below. I could have run. Could have checked out and left this madness behind. But that's not how it works. Not when your job is to chase the darkness, not run from it. So I went below. The elevator was dead. I took the back stairs, the ones staff weren't supposed to use. They wound downward like a spiral, with walls narrowing the deeper I went. I lost count of the floors, the signs long since torn away or blacked out. At the bottom, a black metal door, etched into its surface, scratched in with nails or something worse, was a phrase I'd now seen in 3 different places. She came through the mirror. No handle, just cold steel. I pressed my palm to the door. It opened by itself. Inside was a chamber that shouldn't exist. Round walls, no corners, covered entirely in mirrors, edge to edge. The only light came from a single flickering bulb overhead, casting distorted shadows across every reflective surface. In the center of the room stood a tall, antique mirror, framed in ornate, Baroque gold, cracked across its surface like a spiderweb. The reflection room. As I stepped inside, I felt my skin tighten, like the air itself was a vacuum pulling on my soul. My reflection didn't match my movements. I'd raise my right hand, it would raise its left. I turned around, he stayed. Then it smiled. I didn't. My reflection began to speak, but there was no sound. Only the words forming on glass lips. You came for truth. You brought her back. She remembers you. That's when I realized the case notes. The files in the West Wing. The patients marked with similar symptoms. They weren't suffering from delusions. They were hosts. Temporary vessels. And I triggered the last one. Melinda. A sudden noise behind me. I turned. Melinda stood there, barefoot, blood on her gown, eyes glassy. She's here, she whispered. She wants to show you. And then she stepped into the mirror. Walked straight into it as though the glass were water. The surface rippled once, then stilled. I was alone again. But not really. Because now the mirrors began to move. Reflections of me, but distorted, twisted, older, younger, burned, hollowed, grinning. One by one they stepped out. The light bulb burst. Total darkness. All I had was my recorder, still running, and my own breath. Then a whisper. Pierce. Then louder. Pierce. A scream. But not mine. Dozens of voices at once. Children. Women. Men. All overlapping. All inside my head. I felt her then. Not saw, felt. A presence like cold air pressing on my chest. Something ancient. Something lonely. Something hungry. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a demon. She was a memory that refused to die. Avellini. When I came to, I was back in my room. The sun was rising outside. The power had returned. The mirror above my sink was shattered. My recorder was still running. I played it back. Static. Then a voice. My own. End session log. Detective Marcus Pierce. Case number 12. The Harrow Clinic. Subject Avellini. Status incomplete. Then silence. Then faintly. See you soon. I left the clinic that morning. Didn't sign out. Didn't report to Arlen. I didn't even pack. A week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a small, antique hand mirror. And on the glass, etched faintly, "Welcome back." I smashed it. But some nights, when I walk past reflective windows or polished metal, I catch glimpses of myself smiling when I'm not.